I've been in the storage unit game long enough to know that 9 out of 10 times, you'll walk away with little more than someone's junk and an empty wallet. But that 10th time, that's when legends are made. It was a Thursday morning when the auction listing went up. A standard, low-res photo, red metal doors, a cluttered mess of boxes, old furniture, and something in the back that wasn't quite clear. Most bidders skipped past it. I almost did too, but something about that blurry shape in the back caught my eye. It looked industrial, heavy, maybe even important. The starting bid was $500, and barely anyone touched it. I placed $600. No response. I hesitated. $800. A few seconds of silence, then, sold. To me. I picked up the keys that same afternoon. The manager handed them over with a smirk. You're gonna be disappointed, he said. Maybe, I replied. Maybe not. When I rolled up the red door, the stale scent of dust and time hit me like a brick. The unit was cramped. Boxes, mattresses, broken chairs. All the usual suspects. I started moving the clutter aside when I saw it. In the far left corner, half covered by a moldy tarp, was a large, dark gray shape. I pulled the tarp away. A safe. About 4 feet tall. Solid steel. With no branding, no digital pad, no combination dial. Just cold, silent metal. And it looked old. Industrial. Heavy duty. The kind of thing you'd expect to find in the back room of a 1960s bank. Its surface was worn and scratched, and there was a faded sticker on one side that simply read, "Property of FBR." I had no clue what FBR meant, but I knew one thing. Someone, at some point, went through a lot of effort to keep this thing locked tight. I spent the next hour clearing out the rest of the unit. A few random books, broken appliances, some military-style clothing, but nothing else of real value. The entire unit was a bust, except for the safe, and I had no way of opening it. I rented a dolly and hauled it into my truck. That alone took almost an hour with help. It easily weighed 600 pounds, maybe more. I brought it home, parked it in my garage, and stared at it like it was a puzzle waiting to be solved. I called a local locksmith the next morning. He took one look and whistled. "This thing's ancient. Looks custom. I can try drilling it, but it's gonna take time. And money." "How much?" I asked. He quoted me $500. I hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." He came back with tools, drills, and some kind of industrial cutting equipment. The entire process took over 4 hours. Layers of steel, internal locking mechanisms. It was built like a vault. Finally, with a loud clunk, the door creaked open. Inside was a single metal case, dusty, but intact, and a rolled-up piece of canvas. I reached in, heart pounding. The canvas unfurled to reveal a faded map, hand-drawn, with notations, old coordinates, some kind of legend in the corner. It looked military, or maybe government-issued. The metal case had a single clasp and a lock, which thankfully popped open with a little effort. Inside the case were several sealed envelopes, all marked with dates from the early 1980s. One was labeled, Operation Silvergate. Another, Eyes Only. I stared at them for what felt like minutes. I knew this wasn't some lost family heirloom, or forgotten stash of money. This was something else entirely. The documents inside were strange. Redacted files. Maps of isolated locations. A photo of what looked like an abandoned compound in the desert. One envelope contained a small black and white photo of a man in military uniform. No name, no rank, just a barcode scribbled on the back. It didn't make sense. Why was this stuff in a storage unit in rural Florida? I brought the documents to a friend of mine who used to work in military logistics. He flipped through the papers, eyes narrowing. "This is deep stuff," he muttered. "These markings, they're old intelligence. Maybe even Cold War era. This one, Operation Silvergate. I've heard whispers about it." "What was it?" I asked. He shook his head. "No idea. But it was off the books. You don't find files like this unless someone made a mistake, or wanted them to be found." The story spread fast. A friend posted some of the images on Reddit, and within hours, conspiracy forums were buzzing. Theories ranged from government black sites to secret UFO programs. One user even claimed the barcode linked to a defunct SIA project from 1979. I didn't care much for the speculation. All I knew was this. I paid $800 for what I thought was junk, and found a piece of forgotten history locked behind steel. I kept the safe, repainted it. It sits in my office now, a reminder that sometimes the best treasures aren't gold or diamonds. Sometimes, they're secrets. And this secret, I'm still trying to figure it out. The safe was empty now, but my mind wasn't. I kept thinking about those files, about the name Operation Silvergate, the eerie map, the faceless man in the photograph. What was this stuff doing in a storage unit abandoned for over a decade? I knew I had to dig deeper. The next morning, I revisited the unit's paperwork. Just a name, R. Calhoun. No forwarding address, no emergency contact. I tried searching online, checking public records, nothing. But then I found a 1992 article in an old Florida newspaper archive about a man named Raymond Calhoun, a former government contractor, who mysteriously disappeared after retiring. Last known residence, Pensacola. It couldn't be a coincidence. I drove 6 hours that weekend, straight to the address listed in the article. The house was boarded up, overgrown with vines, long abandoned. Neighbors were tight-lipped or didn't remember the man. One old-timer across the street leaned over his fence and said, "That house has been empty since I moved here 20 years ago." Weird vibes, man. Inside, the place was wrecked. Dust thick enough to write in. Broken furniture, graffiti on the walls. But in a back closet, behind a loose panel, I found something, another metal box, rusted but intact. Inside was a notebook, water damaged but readable. Handwritten notes, dozens of them. The handwriting matched the labels on the envelopes I found in the safe. It was Calhoun. The entries were erratic, half-coded, half rambling, but one phrase kept repeating, "They buried the truth, but I won't." Page after page outlined suspicions about covert government projects, mentions of chemical testing, remote facilities in Arizona and Nevada, a file labeled Gulf Sound Test. That one caught my attention, because one of the maps from the safe had the Gulf Coast circled with coordinates scribbled beside it. The deeper I read, the more I realized this wasn't just an old man's paranoia. There were references to people, real events, dates that lined up with declassified Cold War activities. I even found a torn photo tucked into the back of the notebook, Calhoun again, but this time standing beside a large machine. It looked like sonar equipment, military grade. Suddenly it clicked. The storage unit wasn't just junk. It was Calhoun's insurance policy, his hidden archive. Maybe he thought someone would come looking for it one day, or maybe he knew he couldn't keep it forever. I went back to the map from the canvas in the safe. I plugged the coordinates into Google Earth. A remote patch of land, in the Everglades, barely accessible. It was marked with a strange symbol, almost like a satellite dish or sonar wave. I had to see it for myself. I grabbed my camera, some supplies, and headed out early the next day. It took hours to get anywhere close. Dirt roads turned to trails. Trails turned to marsh. But eventually, deep in the brush, I found it. A concrete structure, mostly buried. Rusted doors. Faded markings. G17. The inside was flooded and collapsed in places, but I got some photos of strange consoles, waterlogged equipment, and a wall panel with the same barcode from the photo I found earlier. Whatever happened here, it had been shut down in a hurry or covered up. I uploaded everything, photos, scans, journal pages, to a private cloud, just in case. Then I started sharing pieces of the story online, carefully, slowly, just enough to get traction, not enough to get flagged. And it worked. A journalist reached out, then a podcaster. The Reddit thread blew up. A week later, someone claiming to be former intel messaged me anonymously, "You found something they wanted forgotten. Be careful." I laughed it off at first, but then things started getting strange. My phone would ring once, then stop. Blocked numbers. My email got locked out for 24 hours due to suspicious activity. A black SUV parked down my street 3 nights in a row, then disappeared. Maybe I was paranoid, maybe not. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just a cool find anymore. It was bigger, and I had a choice. I could bury it, forget the whole thing, walk away. Whoa. I could dig deeper, keep pushing, and see where the trail led. After all, this wasn't just a safe. It was a door to something buried long ago. And I just happened to have the key.